Welcome to this MAC training module. This module will demonstrate liquid asphalt sample data entry and submittal of samples for FDOT verification. We're starting on the FDOT MAC training homepage. This is a useful page to bookmark in your browser as there are links provided to the MAC training environment where this demonstration will be performed. We'll begin by clicking on the Training Environment link. Users practicing on this site must have an access account and the appropriate roles. The role of Company Data Entry or Data Reviewer is required for data entry, and the role of Company Data Reviewer is required for submittal of samples for FDOT verification. Click Login to access the MAC system. Sign in with either your FDOT Active Directory network or email Internet subscriber account based on your MAC access. For this demonstration, an Internet subscriber account will be used. Verify the information entered is correct, then click Login. To access the site, click on Agree to accept the terms of service. Users who are assigned to more than one company, or users who are assigned company roles and system roles, will be presented with a Select Company Role dialog box. Users who are only assigned company roles under one company profile, or users who are only assigned system roles, will not see this dialog box, and MAC will default to the single option available for these users. This is an example of the Select Company Role dialog box for a user with company roles under multiple company profiles and system roles. In this demonstration, the My Asphalt and Emulsions company will be used. When using the training environment, you may need to use an alternate company for which you have been assigned the data entry role. It is important to note, when in the MAC system, do not use your browser's back button or the backspace key when outside of a text box, as doing so will result in logout. Note the header displays the logged in user, the company selected, a link to change company and role, and the log out link. If you click the Help link, a new browser will open with the FDOT State Materials MAC Development homepage displayed, where you will find access instructions, contacts, documents for industry, a link to the MAC production environment, and a link to the MAC training homepage. To initiate sample data entry, click the Manage Samples link. The Manage Samples page displays the last sample the logged-in user updated. Until you have created a sample login, no sample may display. On the upper right is a Go To Sample search field, useful to recall a previously created sample by entering the MAC sample ID. Like many fields in MAC, entering at least 3 characters will result in population of a pick list. On the upper left are 4 links. Search is used to find previously created samples for the company selected by completing one or more of the filter fields. A sample is associated with the same company as the user that initiated the sample. My Samples displays a list of samples created by the logged in user. Submit multiple samples to FDOT is used for that purpose. To initiate a new liquid asphalt sample, click the Create Sample Login link, which we will do now. On the Create Sample Login screen, click on Sample Category. The drop-down menu has 3 sample categories: Program, Project, and Research. Program samples are samples taken for determining if a material meets specific program requirements. For example, liquid asphalt samples taken at the asphalt binder production facility for the asphalt binder QC program. Project samples are samples taken for determining project materials acceptance. For example, soils, concrete, or asphalt samples of materials put in place on a project contract. Research samples are almost always entered by the State Materials Office. In this demonstration, a program sample will be initiated. Now enter the material specification. After entering at least 3 characters, a pick list populates. Here we'll enter 916, which will display the bituminous materials material specification. If we wanted to create a ground tire rubber program sample, 919 would be entered, which would display the ground tire rubber for use in asphalt rubber binder material specification. For this demonstration, we'll enter and select 916 bituminous materials. Then select the MAC spec. There are options for the Binder Control Program, APL, Asphalt Binder and Extraction Recovery, and the Emulsion Control Program. Most typical program samples are for either the Binder Control Program or the Emulsion Control Program. You may disregard the APL option, as the State Materials Office will enter samples for this purpose. For this demonstration, we'll select the Binder Control Program spec. If the sample is taken at an asphalt production facility, the user should enter the contract number that asphalt is being produced for at the time of the sample. If the sample is taken from a liquid asphalt production facility, do not enter a contract number. Here, we will click the Continue to Sample Information screen link. The method of acceptance will be set to sampling and testing. Under Sample Level, there are 3 options. For Program Quality Control samples, sample type QC is the option to select. IV samples are for FDOT independent verification, and VT samples are for department verification testing. Here, we will select QC. Under Categories, the various performance grade binders display. For this demonstration, we'll select a binder PG6722. Next, we'll select the sample purpose, for which there are several options. Based on the selection made, the MAC system will display the required fields for the sample purpose. Selecting Quality Control displays additional field information. Note the orange stars to the right of the fields, which indicates data entry is required by the specific material MAC spec. Here, changing the sample purpose to specification compliance requires completion of an additional field. Here, we'll return the sample purpose to Quality Control. Next, we'll select the Asphalt Binder Production Facility. For this demonstration, we'll be using My Asphalt and Emulsions Company, which was set up in the training environment for demonstration purposes. By entering 3 or more characters of the binder production facility name, a drop-down list will display, from which you will select the correct facility. When the MAC system grays out temporarily, that means it is processing data, and the system displays the corresponding product from the production facility for the category selected. Next, enter the date sample taken. You can do this by clicking in the field and selecting a date from the auto calendar that displays, or by manually entering a date. The calendar will follow you to that date, and you can either select the date or use the Enter key. Note, as you complete required fields, the orange required field indicators either change to an X Clear field button or disappear entirely as the required information is completed. Next, enter the batch delivery ticket number, which for asphalt binder and emulsion samples would be the lot number. And then select the point of sampling, which is where the sample was collected. Here, we'll select Terminal. Next, enter the correct testing lab where the sample will be tested. This could be an in-house lab or an out-of-house testing lab. Enter the lab ID or a portion of the testing lab's name in the field, and a pick list will populate. Each lab is given a specific ID number, and that number must match the lab that is anticipated to do the testing. There is a later opportunity for the lab to reroute the sample, but it is best to get it correct here. If the lab you are trying to enter does not appear on the selection list, try slightly different search criteria. If it does not appear at all, contact the State Materials Office Liquid Asphalt section for further assistance. For this demonstration, we'll be using an in-house lab associated with My Asphalt and Emulsions Company. Contact info for the sample must be entered so the lab or the department knows who to contact in case there are questions related to the sample. That includes entering a contact name, at least one phone number, and a valid email. Please double-check this information so that it is correct on the first sample you create, and so that additional samples created from this sample login are also then correct. Comments can be entered in the comment field if needed. For demonstration, we'll enter Sample Comment. Documents can also be uploaded using the Select File button, browsing to the file, clicking Open, allowing the document to upload, and then entering a description if desired. Document types that can be uploaded include PDF, XLS, and XLSX, Doc and DocX, and text. The option is now to either save or save and submit. If you click Save, the data entered so far can still be updated. If you click Save and Submit, you both save and submit the sample for lab testing, which limits your ability to edit some of the sample information. Here, we'll click Save. Once you click Save, a green notification bar will display confirming the Create Sample login was successful. The sample is now in a log status and MAC assigns a unique sample ID number. Click the Material Information tab or header to display the material information entered for the sample. Clicking the tab or header again collapses the pane. Clicking the Sample Information tab displays sample information entered. Because the sample is still in a log status, the Update Sample Info link displays and allows the sample information fields to be updated. The Update Sample Info link remains active until such time the sample is submitted to the lab and the lab has acknowledged receipt of the sample. Here, for demonstration, we'll change the date sample taken and save the change. And that updates the sample information. Clicking the Laboratory Information tab displays the selected testing lab and the status of the sample. The lab status is waiting on sample to be submitted. The sample will remain in this status until the Submit Sample for Testing link is selected to initiate the sample lab testing lifecycle. If an incorrect lab was chosen, you can click Remove Sample Lab Route and select a new lab. Click the Contact Information tab to display details for the contact person with the option to update contact info. The contact information can be updated until such time as the sample has been submitted for FDOT verification. Under the Sample Comments tab, any entered sample comments will be displayed. For comments you entered, use the pencil icon to update the comment and the X Clear button to delete the comment if needed. As well, responses to existing comments and new comments may be added. Use the scroll bar to display additional tabs if needed. Under the Documents tab, any uploaded documents will be displayed. Use the View Documents link to view the document, the Update link to update the document description, the Delete link to delete a document you have uploaded, or the Upload Document link to upload an additional document. Under the Associated Tests tab, you can view the tests required for the sample but not yet perform them because the sample has not yet been submitted to the testing lab and the lab has not yet acknowledged receipt of the sample. As displayed, the sample is in a status of pending sample submittal. Tests may be field or lab and required or optional as controlled by the MAC spec. With the sample information entered correctly and checked, we'll now click the link to Submit Sample for Testing, which begins the sample lifecycle. Clicking the Save and Submit button when initially creating the sample also will submit the sample for testing. Click the Submit for Testing button to confirm the action. That puts the sample in a Submitted for Lab Testing status. Note the Delete Sample link continues to display, as does the Update Sample Info link, until the testing lab acknowledges sample receipt. Now we'll demonstrate sample receipt by the testing lab. It is the same process whether the testing lab is in-house or if the sample has been sent to an outside testing lab. The testing lab can recall the sample by using the Go to Sample field and entering the sample ID number. The year and leading zeros can be omitted. After entering at least 3 characters, the MAC system will populate a pick list of samples with IDs containing the entered characters. Another option is to use the search link and complete as many of the filters as needed. Here, we'll search by entering the sample category as Program, the material spec ID as 916, and the company, and then click Search. And that displays the desired sample, which is accessed by clicking the corresponding row. The testing lab must acknowledge sample receipt to perform the test, even if it is an in-house lab. Note here, MAC Training is logged in as a user in My Asphalt and Emulsions Company, which is the lab that the sample was routed to. Under the Laboratory Information tab, there are 4 options. One is to route sample to lab, which allows the receiving lab to reroute the sample. If selected, an alternate lab must be entered, a sample type of partial or full must be selected, along with a reroute reason. The lab can also return the physical sample, which, if selected, requires a comment to be entered explaining the reason for return. Similarly, Request additional info requires the lab to enter a comment regarding the additional information needed. Or, which is most typical, the lab can acknowledge sample receipt. Here, we'll acknowledge sample receipt, enter the date received, along with a comment if desired, and then click Save. With the sample now in receive status, the laboratory can update the received date if the received date was incorrectly entered, or if needed, route the sample to an alternate lab. Once the laboratory acknowledges receipt of the sample, the Delete Sample option is no longer accessible, and the Update Sample info is also no longer accessible. All the sample information under the various tabs is displayed for the laboratory. Under the Associated Test tab, with the laboratory having acknowledged sample receipt, tests can now be performed. Clicking Perform Test launches the test dialog and allows data entry for the individual test. If there are multiple tests, a Perform Multiple Test link will display, which allows entry of tests for all required tests in one window. If, for some reason, the test cannot be performed, clicking Mark Test Not Performed requires you to choose a reason why that test was not performed. Note that even tests with results entered can be marked as not performed. Doing so updates the test status to Test Not Performed for the reason selected. Here, we'll perform the test. Start entering test results by entering the tester's information, either using their name or TIN. If the associated MAC spec requires a qualified tester, the test will require entry of a qualified technician per CTQP. If an unqualified technician is entered, MAC does not stop entry or submission of the sample. If a qualified tester is not required by the MAC spec, any text can be entered in the tester field. Next, enter the date on which the test was performed. Based on the test criteria selected, additional required test data fields will display. For example, changing the test from modified equals no to modified equals yes displays additional required fields. Modified DSR tests require the user to indicate whether polymer or rubber is being tested and the phase angle data to be entered. Because this test is for a 67, we'll set modified to no. Required test data fields are denoted by the orange stars. For demonstration purposes, we'll enter a test temperature of 67 and an original DSR of 1.21, from which the system calculates the high temperature true grade. No additional data is required for this test, as none of the remaining fields are denoted with an orange star as required. So the RTFR and PAV data is optional. It can be entered, but currently is not required. Note, if a test data value is entered that does not conform to specific target limits, the MAC system will display a note in red, as demonstrated here. If you want to add a note regarding the test results, expand the Test Notes text field. Once all the required test results have been entered, click Save. Note, tests can be saved without all the required fields. The sample itself, however, cannot be submitted to FDOT for verification or finalization until all the required fields on all required tests have been entered. Under the Associated Test tab, the test status is displayed and the test disposition is displayed as Pass or Fail, which for this sample is Pass. If PAV data is needed to be entered for the sample at a later time, the Perform Test dialog can be displayed by clicking Perform Test. This is accessible until the sample has been submitted to the FDOT for finalization. For demonstration purposes, we'll change this test to a fail status by changing the DSR. Note, that displays the test disposition as fail in red with an asterisk which indicates a potential issue. To confirm the test results, a retest of the sample can be performed by clicking Retest and selecting a reason, for which we'll select Retest, Test Failure, and then click Save. And that displays the retest in a Ready for Testing status. Like previous, we'll click Perform Test, enter the tester, data, required test information, and then Save. Here, we'll enter a passing test result. For retests, a Which Test Rules set of radio buttons displays. These are used to set which test will be used for comparison or verification. When the original test is marked as the test that rules, a Remove Test link displays to remove the retest. Here, for demonstration, we'll set the retest as the test that rules. To view the history of changes made to sample values entered and who made the changes, click View History. The history can be exported using the Export Results link. Click the Close Window X button to close View History. Another useful feature of Mac is the Sample Transmittal form, which is accessed by clicking View Sample Transmittal Information for print. This produces a PDF file which can be opened or saved. Opening the PDF from the taskbar displays the report in a new browser window. The printout itemizes all sample information details exclusive of test results. To return to the Mac system, close the PDF window or click the applicable Mac browser window. Once all the required sample information and test data has been entered, it should be reviewed to confirm it is complete and correct. For samples with laboratory tests, submittal is performed by the testing lab. For samples with field tests only, submittal is performed by the company that initiated the sample. To submit samples for FDOT verification requires the Mac user have the role of data reviewer or system administrator. Individual samples can be submitted by clicking the Submit to FDOT link. If the associated Mac spec indicates Auto Finalize Sample, then the link will read Submit to FDOT. Otherwise, the link will read Submit for FDOT Verification. In this example, we'll submit to FDOT. As noted in the dialog box, once the sample is submitted to the FDOT, it will no longer be updatable. If you launch the dialog in error and do not want to submit the sample, use the Close Window button. Otherwise, to submit the sample, click the Submit for FDOT Verification button. That changes the sample status to Finalized because Program QC samples for monitoring products are auto-finalized and need to be entered on a real-time basis. Samples for specification compliance are also auto-finalized. Note, an important efficiency feature of Mac is the ability to create a new sample from a previously logged sample. Users with the data entry or data review role may create a sample from a sample in any status. Examples submitted for lab testing, pending finalization, etc., as long as they are affiliated with the same company as the sample. Click Create New Sample Login from this sample. For repetitive samples, such as Program QC samples, updating or changing the sample information fields might be as simple as changing the date the sample was taken and the lot number, as done here. With the sample information fields updated for the new sample, click Save, and a new log sample is created. We'll now demonstrate entering test data for a product sample that has test targets and limits set for the specific product. In this case, even though the product is controlled by a Mac specification, the product-specific targets and limits establish pass and fail requirements for the test. Here, Mac Training is logged into the My Asphalt and Emulsions company and is displaying the LA001 production facility. Expanding the Products tab displays the production facility products. Most binders are similar company to company, and test requirements and pass-fail targets and limits are typically controlled by the Mac spec. Emulsion products, on the other hand, can be proprietary and have product-specific targets and limits. Here, we'll view the details for the trackless tack MEAC1HM product. For the trackless tack product, the brand name is displayed along with the material, current status, status date, and APL number. We'll expand the Targets and Limits tab to display the product-specific targets and limits. For demonstration purposes, we've set a product-specific original DSR result that must be greater or equal to 1 at a test temperature of 82 with a required test temperature of 82. The product-specific targets and limits will determine the test requirements for specification compliance and the pass-fail criteria. Now, we'll create a sample and enter test data for this specific product. To start, Mac Training will click on the Manage Samples navigation link. The previous sample the user edited will display. We have the option to create a sample from this sample or create sample login. In this case, we'll create sample login. Once again, we'll be creating a program sample for the 916 bituminous materials material specification using the 916 bituminous materials program emulsion control program Mac spec. With that set, we'll continue to sample information screen. The method of acceptance will be sampling and testing. The sample level will be QC. We'll select the sample category and set the sample purpose to specification compliance, then the facility, and then product, and then enter the sampled by, date sample taken, and batch number. Then enter the testing lab and contact info, then click Save and Submit to submit the sample for lab testing. That puts the sample in a Submitted for Lab Testing status. To acknowledge sample receipt, the lab must expand the Laboratory Information tab and click the Acknowledge Sample link. Then enter the date received and click Save. Sample status is now received. With the sample now received, the Return Physical Sample and Request Additional Information MAC functions are no longer available for the sample. The date of receipt can be updated if it is incorrect using the Update Received Date link. Because the lab has acknowledged sample receipt, the Perform Test for Lab Tests is now accessible under the Associated Tests tab. For this product, there are 7 tests, 6 required and 1 optional. Because there are multiple tests, the Perform Multiple Tests link displays. Clicking this displays the Perform Multiple Tests window. Deselecting any of the tests to perform tick boxes hides the tests on the window. Here we'll demonstrate hiding the Residue by Distillation test. Note, this does not relieve the requirement to perform the test, it only hides it on the Perform Multiple Tests window. Enter the tester and date test performed in the topmost test will carry the same information down to each additional test on the Perform Multiple Tests window. If this needs to be changed for one or more tests, untick the Use Header Info from First Test tick box, which opens the tester and date test perform fields for the test. So now, let's look at how the product-specific limits for the DSR translate to the Perform Test window. The DSR target limit attached to this specific product was a kilopascal result greater or equal to 1 at a test temperature of 82 with a required test temperature of 82. For demonstration purposes, we'll enter a test temperature of 82 and a kilopascal result of 0.9. Stepping off the field displays the warning that the 0.9 result does not meet target limit, which will result in a failed test when saved. As expected, the test is marked as fail. Let's look at what happens when a temperature other than 82 is entered. We'll do that by clicking Perform Test for the DSR. Here, we'll enter a result of 1.1 and a test temperature of 78 and step off the field. And the warning flag for the result no longer displays, but a new warning flag displays because the test temperature does not conform to the product-specific target's limits, which will result in a failing test disposition. As expected, the test is marked as fail. For products with specific targets and limits, even though the product is controlled by a MAC specification, the product-specific targets and limits establish pass and fail criteria for individual tests. We'll now demonstrate entering a certified test report for a new product coming online, using a ground tire rubber product for an example. Here, MAC Training is logged into the My Asphalt and Emulsions company and is displaying the Manage Samples window. We'll start by clicking Create Sample Login. We'll select Program for Sample Category, and then 919 as the material specification for ground tire rubber for use in asphalt rubber binder. Under the MAC spec, there is a ground tire rubber and an APL spec. For demonstration purposes, we'll select an APL spec. The method of acceptance is either a certified test report from another lab, or you did the sampling and testing yourself. Here, we'll select a certified test report. For demonstration purposes, we'll select the pelletized EcoFault product. The FDOT should already have been notified that the material was coming in, so do not submit a new sample without first letting the FDOT know that a new APL product is in the works. Enter the date sample taken, even if submitting a certified test report. Enter the State Materials Office as the testing lab and your contact info. Upload the certified test report as a document using the Select File function. Then click Save and Submit to submit the certified test report for testing. That puts the test in a Submitted for Lab Testing status. Under Laboratory Information, you will not be able to acknowledge sample receipt because the certified test report has been submitted to the State Materials Office. That completes the submittal of a certified test report from your end, unless the SMO has questions. We'll now briefly demonstrate how the State Material Office reviews and finalizes a certified test report for a new product coming online using a ground tire rubber product example. Here, Mac Training is impersonating Curtis Curl at the State Materials Office and is displaying the Manage Samples window with the Certified Testing Report sample displayed. Under the Laboratory Info tab for the Certified Test Report sample, the State Materials Office can acknowledge sample receipt. Under the Documents tab, the State Material Office has access to view the uploaded Certified Test Report, and under the Contacts tab, who to contact with questions. The test performed for a Certified Test Report is very straightforward and consists of a declaration that the Certified Test Report was satisfactory, yes or no. For demonstration, Curtis will indicate the Certified Test Report is satisfactory. That displays the test disposition as passed. The last step would be for the State Materials Office to submit to FDOT, which will auto-finalize the sample, placing it in a finalized status, which basically means the State Material Office has received the report, reviewed it, and agree with it. The final portion of this video will demonstrate how the MAC system functions when a sample has been submitted for FDOT finalization and the State Materials Office or System Administrator returns the sample for sample data correction, sample test correction, or sample data and test correction. Here, Mac Training is impersonating a system admin and is displaying a sample from my Asphalt and Emulsions company that was submitted with incorrect batch ticket information. For samples submitted for FDOT finalization with missing or incorrect information or failing test results, one option the FDOT has is to return the sample for sample data correction, sample test correction, or sample data and test correction. The sample status will indicate the reason the sample was returned. For demonstration purposes, here, the FDOT will return the sample for sample data correction, indicating the batch ticket number is missing. That puts the sample in a corresponding status. Here, Mac Training is back in the My Asphalt and Emulsions Company role with the same sample displayed. When the sample has been returned, the reason comments are located in the sample comments header, where you can add a response if needed. When sample data correction is needed, the sample header fields will be editable by a user with a data entry or data reviewer role associated with the same company as the sample. When a sample test correction is needed, a user with a data entry or data reviewer role associated with the same company as the testing lab may update the test data. Here, the batch ticket number is corrected. Once the sample, test, or sample and test corrections have been made, a user with the data reviewer role can submit the sample to the FDOT. With the sample open, click the Correction Made Submit to FDOT link. Then, to submit, click the Submit for FDOT Verification link on the dialog box. And that concludes this MAC module on liquid asphalt sample data entry and submittal of samples for FDOT verification. When you are done using the MAC training environment, please remember to log out.